What's up, everybody? I'm here with Max Miller from Sharks Digest, and we met at the NHL draft. And what else do you do? You can just tell everybody all of the things you do.
Yeah, what's up? Thanks for having me. So, Max Miller here from Sharks Hockey Digest and NHL.com. It was a pleasure meeting you at the draft. We hung out up in the stands together. We didn't have seats. We're not big enough yet, apparently. But we got a great view of the stage. It honestly wasn't bad. Look, we had more outlets than the people with tables, so that always works. But I've been covering the Sharks. I think this will be third season full time, fourth overall being in and around the team. I used to work for the Associated Press, just did some game recaps for them, but kind of just fell backwards into some roles, formerly of the Hockey News. I love them. They treated me right, but moved on to some bigger and better ventures with NHL.com, and then split off from the Hockey News and started Sharks Hockey Digest, which should gain a lot of momentum here coming up. It was really good over the draft. So if you want to look for that, most of the coverage will be there at sharkshockeydigest.com. Totally free. All my stuff's unlocked. No premiums, at least not yet. I'm not big enough for that yet. But all the top Sharks coverage, news, insights, not only about the Sharks, but NHL news that's big, or any scoops that I get from other teams or whatever it might be will also appear there.
Awesome. It was great meeting you at the draft as well. I kept tripping over everybody's computers and outlets and everything. It was great to be at a draft. Can you tell me about your experience with the decentralized draft and how it was like different for you than other drafts you've covered?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit different. Maybe not necessarily on the draft process in terms of we wait to see who's picked and then you go interview the player at the pod. I was at the one at the Sphere, which was crazy. But when you look at it, I think from a convenience standpoint, from the front office perspective, look, it sounds like it's going to remain decentralized. But when you look at how it went and when you look at there, one thing Mike Gray talked about a lot was like if he needed to get up and go to the bathroom or go get a snack, take a walk, something. And then the other thing is like he gets to sleep in his own bed after night one. And we know how long night one was last time
Yeah.
this year. It was long. Um, but you do miss some of that, seeing free agent, you miss seeing some of the front office members, coaches around, and just that camaraderie. And there just kind of wasn't as much buzz about it around. I think there was a lot of more wind blowing and rumors going around, but it was overall it was fun. But I think for us media members, the decentralized doesn't change too much other than the fact that after instead of meeting with a front office member or GM at a pod after everything's over, it was on Zoom for us, which, it's not for us Sharks members, it's not unheard of. Oftentimes, when none of the three main traveling media members for the Sharks don't travel, we'll get a post game Zoom. So everything will run the same where we'll get three players, we request three players, and we get head coach Ryan Rosofsky. So it's not uncommon for us and the Sharks to do a Zoom interview. We've had a bunch of them over the summer. We did Zoom for all the free agents that are coming in and signings and trades, whatever it might be. So uh, in person's always better when you're talking to somebody. That's just no questions. Like it's just always going to be better. But it was fine. We got the work done, got the job done, and seeing the players and going face to face in front of the players is arguably the most important thing in that entire weekend.
Yeah, and obviously the Sharks have an incredible young core with players like Celebrini, Will Smith, Michael Misa, and I can name like 50 more. But can you tell me a little bit about like what you see with Michael Misa and his role? Do you think that he's going to be the center for the second line for the next 10, 15 years, or are they going to play him with Macklin Celebrini?
I think I'm gonna go with the former, right? I think he fits more of a center than Will Smith does. Smith's gonna get a shot at 2C this year. It all kind of also depends on what Michael Misa's status is. From everything I've heard, I don't think he goes to the NCAA, but I can't confirm and rule that out 100%. But if he signs, right, and he makes the team, I think we see a very similar process to how Will Smith was, right? He started as a center. I think they'll start Misa as a wing and he'll play center in a pinch. I think his play style fits more of a center than Will Smith's does. But I think just learning the league, especially a guy like Michael Misa, who is kind of right on the borderline ready for NHL, and how much is he really going to improve going back to the OHL? But he needs pro hockey, so it's a tough decision to make when it comes to Michael Misa. But I think in terms of ease of development and learning the NHL, if he does make the NHL right away, I think he goes to the wing. I think they found a system that worked for a player that's maybe not quite ready for a full center role, and it keeps him in the top six if he goes to the wing too. And it gives Will Smith a shot. And if Will Smith's shot at center doesn't work out, by the time you give him that runway, you can slide Misa in maybe halfway through the year and he can play that 2C role, maybe even 3C.
Mhm. So, like Michael Misa's brother Luke obviously plays at Penn State now with two loaded players with Gavin McKenna and Jackson Smith, who they're both incredible players. Do you think that the Sharks would want him to play at Penn State and try to be on a line with Gavin McKenna?
There's no really way of knowing. I think that would be in a perfect world amazing. And I think Penn
Mhm.
State would win. And I think the Sharks are foaming at the mouth because if that happens, then Reese Laubach, who had a good season for Penn State, who's a San Jose native seventh round pick a couple years ago, he's around some top talent. I do think Laubach's role goes back down, but from a development standpoint, the NCAA is great. I think it does get that bridge that gap nicely, but I just don't know how much maybe Mises camp wants him to go to NCAA. I think they feel like he's ready. I mean, he's shown he can be a top talent at the CHL level. Uh, he's of the nature where you could put him in like a Jack Hughes situation where he's maybe not quite ready for the NHL, but he give him that run, and year two he goes off. And I think that might be a better comparable, maybe not from a player profile standpoint, but from a timeline standpoint. I think Jack Hughes probably wasn't ready for the NHL, but he's an overall pick and he made do. But in year two, I think he's got 99 points and he was great. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think, maybe they would prefer to go to NCAA, but I think they understand that, you have to give a little to get and just you can't just force him to go there if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, I remember the after Jack Hughes' rookie year, there was YouTube videos like worst rookie of all time, like
Yeah.
instant bust, like things like that. Like obviously these players are 17, 18, 19 years old now with the weighted just the like weight on your shoulders that you have to be a franchise player or the savior to a franchise. I think Michael Misa is incredibly talented. I'm a Blackhawks fan and really wanted us to get a top two pick for Michael Misa. But can you talk to me a little bit about like Sam Dickinson and what you see with his progression? Do you see him as a number one defenseman? And just on the back end of the Sharks, like who are some players that are often overlooked?
Yeah, for sure. With Sam Dickinson, look, it's frustrating. He's a late birthday because I think he deserves like 50, 60 games at the NHL level, but I think he needs to start in the AHL. Just literally like 15 games. Get him, get his feet wet in pro hockey, bring him up. Based on the trades we saw of Henry Thrun, and we look at the other moves and Jack Thompson kind of Jack Thompson is Jack Thompson. Sam Dickinson is a much higher level prospect. Could he be a number one defenseman for the Sharks? Yes. I think depending on what they bring in, maybe if they make a trade, whenever that might be, of who I don't know, Sam Dickinson could be a number one defenseman. Yes. I think he fits better as a number two, Devon Taves, with maybe a little bit more offense. Um, but I think you look at the moves. I think the Sharks are going to start with 8 defensemen on the roster because Sam Dickinson has at least earned the right for 9 games. So just wait and see. Can't go to the AHL unless it was next year. He could with the new CBA, but it is what it is. He he came into development camp a smiling, happy-go-lucky person like he always was, but like 3 times bigger. He is strong as can be. You could see from year one after the draft, he was like, "Oh, he's a good player. He could be a solid player." And then you look at his last season in London, and you went, "Holy cow!" Like he's a really good defenseman. And the fact the Sharks got him at 11, I think he's got a higher upside than offensive upside than Lev Shunov. I think Lev Shunov might have a better overall, well-rounded two-way game. I think some of the mistakes are a little cleaner on Lev Shunov's spot. I think they're very similar players. I think they're both really good skaters. I think, like I said, I think Dickinson has a little bit more of that higher offensive potential. And I also think that's just development. Michigan State and defense they're an offensive heavy team through the forwards. London, I mean, Tim Dickinson was ridiculous. I mean, they would run two defensemen on the power play, right? He would be the point man with Bonk in the middle. It's that's a defenseman drive the puck, carry the puck in the zone. I think that development style is a little different, and I think team fit. I think Lev Shutnov fits the Blackhawks more anyway. As for some underrated Sharks defenseman, I mean, he made 6 games last year. Luca Cagnoni was a fourth-round pick. He was actually the first defenseman from the 2024 NHL draft to make the NHL,
Wow.
uh, which is
Yeah.
surprising because he's 5'10" and a very good skater. AHL rookie team last year, led all rookie defensemen in points. I think he was like second or third in points by defenseman overall behind Jacob McDonald, who was absurd. He was Cale Makar of the AHL, ironically playing for Colorado's minor league team. I think he's a solid player. I think people are waiting to see what Shakir Mukhamadullin can do. We saw a glimpse of it, and then he got hurt, and I think he's going to be a really good shutdown player. Jack Thompson is a great puck mover, but with Dickinson being looking like he's going to make an NHL spot, there's one defenseman that likely is going to need to go down, and if I had to guess, it's probably Jack Thompson, and he's waiver eligible. Um, I think if the Sharks were to send down anybody else, they're getting claimed. I think Jack Thompson's the only one that you might be able to sneak through, but I don't know. It's tough to see. Other defense prospects, I mean, Leo Osayin Wallenius and Matthias Havlet are going to play in the AHL this year. They both signed. I'm interested to see what Osayin Wallenius does. He's kind of that unknown Swedish defenseman. What are you going to see? We know Swedish defensemen are good skaters. Pro hockey, adjusting to the North American ice. Barracuda had a massive roster turnover. Obviously, they lost Andrew Podorowski, the MVP. But from a defensive perspective, that defense kind of got a massive overhaul. And then the last one is Noah Beck. He signed from Arizona State at the end of last season on a PTO, and then he signed the rest of the way now. And it's going to be interesting to see what he does in terms of if that game, that sudden breakout that last year at ASU translates to pro hockey. Um, Big guy can skate, but he's never really been like a top defense prospect. And last year was, oh, where did this guy came kind of out of left field? So I think it's a great little, prospect, take a chance on, see what we can do. And I think he's the real big question mark because nobody really kind of knows where that came from last year and if it can continue.
So I've been diving very deep into the deep end of the Sharks prospect pool. And obviously I was a big Sam Dickinson guy. I think that Sam Dickinson, the only thing that he had all the skills, all the traits, raw offensive potential. And I do agree that I think that his offensive potential is a lot higher than Artem Levshunov. I actually think that Sam Dickinson was overlooked or overshadowed because of Zane Parekh, Zeev
Yeah.
Boyum, all those guys in the defense. Like there was a point in time where Sam Dickinson might have been the number 2 or 3 or 4 pick for the Blackhawks, depending on how the lottery went. There was
Mhm.
talk that the Blackhawks loved him. So when the Sharks got him at 11, everybody was like, "Oh, it's only Sam Dickinson," and then it's like, well, for Blackhawks fans, but that was just, I think, Blackhawks fans coping a little bit because Blackhawks fans wanted Sam Dickinson, and then there's this narrative where he's not a good player. I think that the thing with Sam Dickinson was, could he think the game at a high level? And he obviously has
Yeah.
showed that. He has. Like, I
Like
think that,
that's honestly that's his best skill is thinking the game
yeah,
because he's a
yeah,
good skater, not an amazing skater. He's a very good skater, upper above average skater. But like what makes him that above average skater is because he's always in the right spot because he thinks the game
yeah.
so well.
hmm And there was this article that came out on The Athletic, and his hockey IQ is like a 4 out of 10, and I was just like, that doesn't make much sense to me. So there was kind of this narrative during his draft season that he didn't have a high hockey IQ, and I thought that was dispelled very early on, even this year or even last year. But Luca is an incredible power play player. And it's not just power play. If this guy has any space, he looks like a fourth forward out there. I think that that's like one thing that Blackhawks fans or fans that are just like tallying who has the best prospect pool don't really look at. I think the goalie situation for the Sharks is something to admire because there's 3 starting goaltenders in my opinion with I don't know how you feel about Michael Harabel or Askarov is obviously a great player. And then you got Ravensburgen, but can you tell me a little bit about like who you think would be the 1A, 1B, or like the tier of those goalies?
Like of in terms of like, are we predicting in the future? Excuse me, or are we talking like
Like
you know
predicting in the future, yeah. So
predicting
like,
the future? I think Askarov is touted as the guy. I think Ravensburgen is a project. I think you could see it's a really long shot to happen, but it's a really weird vision that I keep seeing. I almost see like a Pekka Rinne UC Saro situation. They're a little closer in age, obviously, between Ravensburgen and Askarov, but like 5 years is significant. I think Ravensburgen needs a lot of time to gear up. And I mean, obviously, he had an injury, but he still showed flashes last year, rated the number one goalie prospect. When they took him, I was a little surprised they took a goalie. I was like, well, you already have Askarov. But when you look at the prospect of Ravensburgen, you're like, wait, that's a pretty damn good core. And then you throw on Matt Davis, who's done nothing but win. Matt Davis projects to be a pretty solid NHL backup who needs some time in the NHL and he or in the AHL, and he's with the Barracuda now. And I think that's I think when you look at the Sharks goalie prospect pool, it's very high upside. It just needs to be done right, which the Sharks have not done since Evgeny Nabokov. So it's kind of scary. But when you look at Thomas Beer's track record, Sergei Romanov was kind of a project goalie, and he looked solid. I was a little surprised they didn't qualify him. Devin Cooley, who nobody knew about at all whatsoever, joined the NHL and became in a month like a very solid goalie and was arguably the best goalie in the AHL this past season for Calgary. And nobody knew who he was. I was like, who is this guy? He's from Los Gatos. He's from the area. I've never heard of him. Really nice guy, and he turned into a really good goalie. And you look at Thomas Beer and Ryan Miller, and you look at Evgeny Nabokov. They seem to be all working the same wavelength. I don't know what this fascination is with right-handed catching goalies. Ravensburgen, Askarov, Davis. You know what? If it works, it works. If they can stop the puck, I think that's all they're going for. It just seems to be that they see these guys and they start catching right-handed, and we see it a little bit more frequently now. But long term, I think dream scenario is Askarov is your guy for a long time, and Ravensburgen just is there, and then you don't overwork one of the two of them. You can run a 1A, 1B with Askarov playing 55, 60, 62 games. And then when he starts getting older, you kind of flip the roles, and Askarov runs into the backup 50-50 almost. And then you go from there. Almost a Tuukka Rask, Jarro Halak timeline, like where Tuukka Rask is your guy, but he's playing 50-50. You're not wearing him out, and he's so solid because of it. And then once Askarov's time in the sun is over, Ravensburgen's 27, 28, right in the prime of a goalie. Keep on coming, like you know what I mean. Like I feel like you've separated it out maybe a little too close for my liking, but it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about like to go back to the goalie talk with Ravensburg, and I talked to Shang as soon as like that pick happened, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Well, I believe he was like Andrianov is signed till 2030, and the Blue Jackets took him. I think it was just value based. He was kind of a little confused, but other than that, it was like value. And then the Sharks got Simon Wang. Can you tell me a little bit about like what your first reaction was when they took him, and like was he on your radar for the Sharks to take? Very high upside, good skating, big defenseman playing at Boston University next year.
Yeah, well, he's gonna stay. He's gonna stay in the OHL one more year, and
Okay.
then he's gonna go to BU because he didn't play full time in the OHL last year. So he's gonna do one more year there, and then he's gonna go there. And so Haoshi Wang, which is he wants it written as Haoshi parentheses Simon Wang. At the draft, they told us he was Simon Wang, and then when we got to development camp, he's like, I think PR got to him was like, no, if you want to go by Haoshi, you can. And he's such a nice guy. We went to interview him. He went to grab like the Sharks Audio Network microphone. We're like, no, no, no. We'll hold it for you. You just talk. So he's a very nice guy. He was a little bit on my radar, but not from a defense perspective. I think when I was looking at it, I think they wanted something more projectable. And not to say that Haoshi Wang isn't. I just think the Sharks, and you could look at this for almost every single one of their picks other than Misa. Like these are all high upside guys that are going to take a while. And I think when you look at where the prospect pool is, you kind of need to space out a little bit. Haltonen's coming in, Musty's coming in. Graf needs time. Cardwell needs time. Misa, Celebrini, Smith. Like you need time to kind of let top guys that you have ready now or close to ready now get their roles so that you can develop and then have that next feed come in right underneath it to feed in. And when you look at the upside of a lot of the players that they picked, and that's, Haoshi Wang too, like they don't fill in to be top six guys. Haoshi Wang may be a top four shutdown guy and it's skating. I put out a clip during development camp. It was Wang versus Misa. The amount of edge work control that Haoshi Wang had was absurd. Misa still made a move, but Wang, got it. The biggest thing with him is puck. I mean, whether it's collecting the puck off the boards, moving the puck, making a good breakout pass, shooting it and getting it through screens, not over pinching and knowing when to do that. He's going to shut down plays on the wall, which is something Ryan Warsofsky desperately wants from every player on the team. And I think you look at Shakir Mukhamadullin, Haoshi Wang, and Sam Dickinson, you're like, that's a big trio. Sam
Hmm.
Dickinson can run the offense. Mukhamadulin's a good puck mover and shuts down plays beautifully. And Haoshi Wang, if he develops properly, should be the same thing as Mukhamadullin. Great skater, probably a better skater than Mukhamadullin, and can shut down plays really well, which is something you need. You need big tree trunks on the back end to win Stanley Cups, as we've seen.
I asked Ravensburgen what his biggest strength was at the combine, and he said it was his skating. And I thought that was interesting. And then Simon Wang, his best trait might be his skating, and also
Mhm.
Michael Misa might be his skating because everybody says he skates like the wind, and his skating is absolutely unbelievable. So it seems like the Sharks kind of prioritize skating this year. Is that something that um they wanted to do, or was it just like the players that were available?
I think it was a mixture of both. I definitely think this was just like, you know what? Because the Sharks didn't make any moves. They used all their picks. It was a very quiet draft for them, if you will. Um, but I definitely think you look at the Sharks and their struggles, their biggest struggle, even when they were trying to be competitive, but not in the first few years of when they kind of needed to rebuild, but they didn't do it yet. Their biggest letdown was their skating. I mean, they were not fast. They were not fluid. They brought in Eric Carlson to help with that, but that's back end Eric Carlson, and Eric Carlson's not going to play much defense and use that skating for defense. Burns was a good skater, but on the wrong side of 35. Still a good player, still a good skater, but he's not going to hit. He's not going to block shots. He's going to shoot the puck a lot. That's Brent Burns. But you look at, Thomas Bordeleau, who they traded, okay skater. Eklund has really worked on his skating. He's a good skater now. Will Smith, his flaw is skating. And as a centerman, you need that skating ability. So when you look at Misa, like outright, like that's one of the main reasons why I project Misa as a center over Will Smith because of the skating. Celebrini's a great skater. Colin Graff's a good skater, right? You look at some of these things. Haltonen, great shot, biggest flaw, skating. Musty, good shot, great offensive instincts. What's he need to work on? He needs to bring that skating and the defensive IQ up. So when you look at kind of a prospect need, team needed size and skating. And I guess just kind of the way the board fell to them, it kind of worked out, right? Because they didn't go like huge other than How Shi Wang, but like Cole McKinney, like everybody other than Gallant and seventh round were all big players who could skate, bigger players who could skate. Max Heis, like that dude can fly and he's big. He doesn't know kind of where his limbs are going because he's still developing into his body, kind of like Kevin Durant when he was young in his career, when he was like really lanky and floppy and all over the place because he couldn't figure out the coordination. Kristaps Porzingis even.
Be
He
honest.
could fly. He's big. He could move. He could shoot. And the Sharks needed that. And that kind of when you work on guys who can skate and bring it to another level, everything else after that from a hockey perspective, I mean, everything I've been told from when my playing days were happening was work on your skating. After you skate, everything else falls into place. So if you have the skating down and you don't need to do that, skating's the hardest thing to perfect and improve. If you have that down and you don't need to you can minimally improve that as you go and everything and work on all the other stuff, you're going to be a better player because you don't have to worry about the main thing in hockey, which is skating the puck or skating to an area or skating. Everything comes from skating. So I think it really works for the Sharks and it's something they've been, needing. I wouldn't say lacking, but needing an upgrade in for all levels, whether it's development prospects, NHL, AHL, everywhere.
To ask you about like we were at Tom's Watch Bar, I believe for like the media, we got
Yeah, the party
some
or whatever
stuff.
it was.
Yeah, yeah. There was a moment when at the event, everybody kind of was talking about Misa going three to the Blackhawks and Frondell going two. Did you think that it was going to be Frondell at any moment during that day? And was that just all smoke? Obviously, it was smoke screen, but why do you think that all came out?
So I have a few theories. That the day before the first round, so when we were at Tom's Walk Party, I was very much like, okay, from everything I've heard and people I've talked to, like someone told me, you know, all this stuff about Frondell is coming out now so it can prepare the fan base. And that was the one where I was like,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Sharks fans are pissed. And the amount of DMs and texts from friends and family and people are like, if they take Frondell, I'm gonna be. And I was like, I'm also on the Misa. I think they should take Misa. I was on the side where Schaefer's the number one guy, but like even if they had the number one pick and they picked Misa, I'd be like, that's a great pick because the offensive upside is the best of the draft. And I think it's a little better than Celebrini's. But when you look at, when I heard that, I was like, okay, I think it's gonna be Frondell. The next morning, I reached out to some people and I talked to other people, and there were no extra meetings between Misa and the Sharks and Frondell and the Sharks. From everything I heard about the meeting with the Sharks between Misa at the Combine, they were really, really, really high on them. They liked him, and I think like the night before, I was like, don't be surprised if it's Frondell. But when I put up my actual prediction like 2 hours before the draft, I was like 60% confident in Misa, so I went with Misa. I was like, you know what? All this talk, I know I said Frondell yesterday, but I think it's gonna be Misa. And when we spoke to the Sharks and Mike after, he was like, no. he's been our guy for a while. So then you throw in the theory is like my career, I think might be a master smokescreen person, or he'll just say something where he knows it's like little might some little bit might get out there, but like it shouldn't mean anything. But he kind of knows the system, if you will. And this is all theory. I don't know if he's doing this or not, or people are just misconstruing his words because Mike is a very, I wouldn't say he's a over, yeah, I mean, like Danny Barrera talks a ton. He goes on podcasts a ton. Mike Greer's a quiet guy. We talk to Mike Greer like 3 to 4 times a year. We've talked to him like 4 times this offseason. That's a lot for me since I've done this. And it's good because he's a good talker. He's still got the hockey player in him with the knows and the ums and the fillers, but it is what it is. But he's an honest guy. Like he doesn't let out information he doesn't want to. He doesn't care what questions you ask him, but if he doesn't want to answer a question, he won't, and he won't let out anything more by it. So which makes me think it's like, okay, he's not trying to like, there's something coming. Or like if he wants to let us in on something before something comes out, he will. So I don't know how it started. I don't know where it started. Ryan Clough, the assistant GM, was also like, yeah, I don't know where this started. This was never a discussion amongst like it sounded like it was Misa since like January. Like it was if we're one, we're Schaefer. If it's two, we're Misa. And they were kind of like set in stone. I think three is where the wild card would have come in, but I think they knew what they were going to do, whether they were first or second. And I think after the draft lottery, they had a meeting. They went, Misa, Misa. All right, it's Misa. And I don't know where the hell this Frondell stuff came from. But I think if there was a team that was going to trade for number two, the closest was Utah. I know Utah and the Sharks spoke during the combine. Stefan Rosner of the Hockey News told me that, and the Elmonters. But when you look at some of the reporting after the fact, right, Utah was the most aggressive to get to two, so it sounded like they wanted Misa. The Sharks know what they have in Misa, and I think they're very excited about how they can kind of fit the puzzle pieces because I think after Will Smith's success in the wing last year, I think that's where they see him. But they're going to do right by the player. They're going to give him a chance at center. That's his best. That's his natural position. So I don't know where this Frondell talk came from, but I thought for a second it might have been.
Was awesome. I had no idea where it came from. I was pleasantly surprised that it was even happening, but I watched Mike Greer's, or it was what was it? Like the pre to the NHL draft, and he was talking about both Anton Frondell and Misa, and I was like, maybe they are going.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like he's very good at just like he was just answering questions, right? We were asking him questions about Misa and Frondell and
Yeah.
right the Frondell rumors, but he's very good at just like we like the player, like well, he's just given what he scouted.
Yeah.
But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean, but you know what I mean? He was like, well, huh? Is there a little bit of a chance? And that's kind
Yeah.
of where he does a good job of writing line. He's like, I'm just telling you what we know about the player. I didn't say anything else.
Yeah. Is there a prospect that in the Sharks organization that you think goes overlooked at any position that is kind of like your one of your favorite players? Yeah, was.
I mean, I love Casper Halttunen, but I feel like he's kind of more well known now, especially after the 2 seasons he's had. Luca Cagnoni was always kind of my like he's my guy. But when you look at a guy like Joey Muldowney or Brandon Svoboda,
Mhm.
like Muldowney, one thing misses is size, but he played really well at UConn last year, really well. And I think you're going to sign him at the end of this season, upcoming season. Svoboda projects to be like a perfect fourth line center who could chip in.
Yeah.
Nobody expected him to make Team USA, scores a big goal in the gold medal game. He doesn't play a ton, but he makes an impact. Big guy, can skate. Father has that NHL experience. Sharks love having former NHLers in their organization. Look, Brandon Svoboda is not going to make headlines and waves and be this top end major prospect, but he's going to fill a role, an NHL role, perfectly. And I think him and Muldowney, who has high upside to be like a middle six, second power play, fit in the top power play scorer, rush scorer, that could work. But Svoboda fits a puzzle piece that nobody's going to talk about. He's going to take time. He's 20. Could sign after this year, but I don't think so. I think they let him going to go 3 years and then sign. But we'll see what he does in BU this year. If he has a good year, maybe moves up to the third line center. I think he's a perfect bottom six center. He's responsible. He's big. He gets to the front of the net, and he can shoot the puck. He's a perfect fourth line center. Where you need a goal. Nick Bonino will score you for 13 goals a year, right? Like he'll score you 15 goals a year. And if you need a net front power play depth guy who's going to grind, he's really good in front, and he's got great touch in front of the net. So I would say Muldowney and Svoboda are my two kind of unsung heroes, with Cagnoni finally getting some love this past season.
We'll throw Obviously, Quentin Musty is well known, but I was a
Yeah.
huge Quentin Musty fan. I wanted the Blackhawks to trade up to get him. I thought he was falling away too much. I'm still upset that the Sharks got him and Chernyshov because Chernyshov is absolutely a beast. And him and Misa, I don't think anybody really is talking about what they're going to do on that second line, in my opinion. I think that they will put Chernyshov on the second line to be with him, but who knows? I mean, their top six is loaded, so I have absolutely no idea where he would play. Yeah, do you have an opinion on where he would play? Do you think he could be third line?
Musty or Chernyshov?
Chernyshov.
Chernyshov, I think in an ideal world is if he goes peak development, is a second line winger who's going to
Yeah.
play in front of the net on the power play. He's a good puck mover, great puck protector. But I think I think in the Shark system, I think he's going to be can he play his off wing? I think he can in a pinch, but I don't think he's a full time off wing kind of guy. He'll score, he'll move the puck. His skating needs to go up another level, right? And you look at Chernyshov and you look at the season he had. Edge work is great, but that speed, that foot speed needs to come up. I think in a perfect world, I think he and Misa are together on the second line, which is a de
Mhm.
facto first line on some teams at peak
Yeah.
development. But I feel like given the opportunity and probably the moves the Sharks are going to make in terms of free agency or whatever happens to trade, I think Chernyshov might be, unless he develops really good, more of a third line scoring winger who will get good minutes. He'll be that like upper end third line who plays
Mm.
16 minutes a night. He won't play the third line 12 to 15. Like
Yeah.
he's got that 16. He'll get runs in OT because he's got that space and skill and puck protection. He'll be on a power play unit. He might even be on the first one just from a scheme perspective. But it's tough to see where Musty has that offensive instinct that's really good, and I think he just needs to work on the little things, and he showed that a little bit in development camp at the scrimmage. But when you look at the defensive side of the thing, it's tough, and he seems like a guy who can get frustrated easily. He's so far battled through it, but I think he makes his NHL debut this season. He's going to play in the AHL. I'm interested to see what kind of camp both of those guys have because I think either one of them could surprise and be like oh, they had a good camp. We're going to start them in the NHL. I don't think they'll be in the NHL full time right away, but I think one or both could start in the NHL this season if they have really good camps. Because the Sharks, the biggest thing Mike Grier said is they don't want to block a young guy's path,
Yeah.
and they've shown they won't do that. They might pull up a Colin White out of a true, like, we need a center, like an actual center, and they'll pull up a Colin White for 2 games or an Andrew Podorowski for 3 games. But when you look at now, you have Smith, Celebrini, Misa, and potentially more down the middle. Wenberg, Gaudette can play in the middle. Kurashev can play the middle if you desperately
Mhm.
need him to. Goodrow can play the middle. Like, you're fine down the middle in terms of spots now. Like you don't have to keep rolling out Luke Cunnin as your third line center. Um, so I think you could see them make the NHL roster. I don't think Goodrow gets cut. I don't think Reeves gets cut, but I wouldn't. I'm more confident in Goodrow not getting cut than I am Reeves. But they traded for Reeves and they gave up a pretty valuable asset for it. Um, but I could see one or both of Chernyshov Musty making the NHL roster out of camp this year.
What do you like project the Sharks to do this year? Are they in the McKenna race or are they somewhere where the Ducks were this year?
They won't be where the Ducks were. They'll be better, but they'll be in the McKenna race in the 4 through 7 rankings
Mhm.
rather than the top four or top three, I should say. At least I think so. I think they'll be better. Look, they 20 like 23, I think it was like 1 goal losses, some absurd number like that. But like a bunch of those 1 goal losses were blown third period leads or
Yeah.
like
Oh,
I'm still not a fan of the defense core. I think Orlov is great. I like the Lediad. We'll see what Mukamadulin does. I like Lodrigan more than some people do. Not a huge Vinny Darnay fan on the ice, off the ice. I'm a huge Vinny Darnay fan. He's hilarious. Um, I loved Thrawn off the ice. I thought he was a good player on the ice. His skating wasn't up to par from where the Sharks needed it. Dickinson is a higher prospect, a younger prospect, a cheaper prospect with more team control. Thrawn was the odd man out. Um, the Orlov ad is great. Other than Dickinson and Kenyoni, eventually, I don't see much offensive upside. And even then, those guys aren't going to put up 70 points each on the back end. Ferraro is probably going to get traded eventually. And I think Ferraro deserves a shot at a place with a winning environment to help his development if there's any left, because I think he's just worn down. as from the losing. So they'll be better, but we'll see what happens with the goaltending too if it can hold up because Nedeljkovic can get hurt and Askarov we've seen has a little bit of an injury issue as well.
So I wanted to ask like one or two more questions. One was there's this thing going around Celebrini versus Bedard, and obviously I'm on like Team Bedard slightly. I think most Sharks fans would be on Team Celebrini. Can you
Yeah.
give your debate on why it should be Celebrini? And while you
I was
answer,
gonna cop out. I was gonna cop out and say offensively, Connor Bedard, well-rounded, Macklin Celebrini, and then just leave it because that's literally all the question is I think Bedard literally just needs some help, and you'll see him explode offensively. I think Bedard's got a better wrist shot. He's got decent hands. I think Celebrini needs to be more creative with his hands. Bedard has that creativity. I think Celebrini's a faster skater than Bedard. Bedard might have slightly better edge work, but both are kind of even there. I think if you're looking from a team perspective, if you look at Connor Bedard's player comps, none of them are Sidney Crosby. When you look at Macklin Celebrini's player comps, it's Sidney Crosby, Jonathan Taves. Those are two very different players. Bedard being Patrick Kane or Jack Hughes or um,
Matthews,
Matthews, not
Ovechkin,
quite McDavid. I wouldn't say
Jason
Ovechkin.
Gretzky.
Well, relax,
I just throw it in names.
relax. Ryan McLeod. No, but I just think it's going to be hard to compare them. It's hard to compare Ovechkin and Crosby because Crosby's an MVP, Ovi's an MVP. Ovechkin isn't a defensive workhorse. Crosby is. And when you look at, I mean, you could tell me who Bedard's idol was, but all Celebrini does is gush and talk about how much he loves Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
The dude is like a living embodiment of what he wants to be, and he does everything to try to be Sidney Crosby. And then you go to the World Championships. Hey, Mac, you wanna play with Crosby? And it's like they've been playing together for 15 years because Crosby or Celebrini knows exactly what Crosby's going to do because all he does is watch Sidney Crosby. So when it comes to Connor Bedard, it's tough because they're different players. It's a team fit in my mind. What do you need? And I think from the Sharks' perspective, the offensive upside you're getting from Misa, not Celebrini. And Celebrini will put up 90 to 100 points. I think Misa will be 100 to 110 points.
So that's a great answer to that question.
A cop out nonetheless.
I wish it was just, Bedard and that was it.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding. So can you tell me a little bit about like the Blackhawks versus Sharks prospect pool? And like what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I haven't done as much deep dive in the Blackhawks pool, but obviously being a Sharks writer, you're focusing on that, you're writing on that, and you look at the Blackhawks pool, it just looks like they've got a lot of very similar spots to kind of how the Sharks drafted this year, where you've got that upside, that kind of unknown upside where you could see it, but it has to go right, other than Connor Bedard. For the Sharks, like you could see pieces fitting in, and it's kind of hard to see pieces fitting in a direction. I think the Blackhawks tried to go veteran support a little too
Mhm.
quickly, and not the right veterans. I like the Ryan Donato ad, but like Tyler Toffoli, like he's one, and Tyler Toffoli does not equal Nick Foligno and Pat Maroon. Like Tyler Toffoli is better than those guys and scored 30 goals again. And if he didn't score 30 goals again, Toffoli works hard. Toffoli, and you look at how they were off the ice. You don't see Bedard much with some of the older guys off the ice. And you look at Toffoli with Smith and Celebrini,
Yeah.
he's literally the fun uncle. Like he's the dad. Like he slept over with them on a couch bed because they all scored in the same game. What veteran would do that? Like
Yeah.
what veteran does that? But that shows you there it is. But then when you look at that, like it's one thing to have that, and the Blackhawks could have had that. But
Yeah.
like Toffoli scored 30 goals. I, I think Toffoli's probably the next captain of the Sharks, if I'm being honest with you. I just think when the Blackhawks, they've got a lot of, I don't want to say slower development, but it's going to take like meticulous and detailed. Whereas you can kind of see the Sharks, like going back to the Svoboda one, right? Like, yeah, like he was a second round pick, like, but like you drafting him to be a top six? No, you're drafting him to be a fourth line center. And you look at where he's playing for BU, and you look at where it got him for the world in World Juniors, and how well he played that role, and how well he played the role for 2 seasons now. Like they're drafting not necessarily out for need, but like upside with a purpose, if you will. And I feel like that with a purpose is lacking somewhat on the Blackhawks side. I think you see Connor Bedard, and I think that hype maybe got to their heads a little bit where it's like, Oh, we got our McDavid.
Yeah.
Nobody's McDavid. I don't like if you take McDavid off Draisaitl's team, Draisaitl can get you there, but you need a better team there. But I don't know if Draisaitl's that McDavid level. I'm gonna carry you for 4 straight games. I think Draisaitl needs a little bit of help, but he's still a top 3 player in the league. That's just how good McDavid is, and I think that the comparisons of Bedard to Crosby level and McDavid level, I think maybe kind of got the Blackhawks front office a little too excited. Um, but the first year was good, and you saw what he did with Kurashev. I just feel like the pieces didn't fit it. I'm gonna make a really bad baseball analogy here. I'm a New York Yankees fan, and the Yankees cannot do anything right now. They are everything you hear is a baseball team is a puzzle piece. You need the fundamentals and everything to fit in place. And the Yankees have a lot of really good players and young players, but the puzzle just isn't correct. Like it's just not fitting. And I'm not saying the same thing is going to happen with the Blackhawks or is happening, but I feel like the prospect pool is kind of a little all over the place. You
Mhm.
don't see a direction. You see a little bit with Lev Shunov and Bedard. You see your two horses, but I feel like you're kind of looking around. They have some other good players, but you're kind of looking around a little bit more. So I did like their draft this year. It's going to be interesting when I pull up their Puckpedia, their prospects. When I look at their players, they've got good players. I'm not a huge fan of the what's it called I'm totally blanking on the move right now. The Tyler Bertuzzi contract is what it is.
Mhm.
Like why? Like
That
you're not
was
trying
tough.
to win.
Yeah.
But Oliver Moore's a really good player. Landon Slaggert's a decent player. I love Connor Zary. Frondell's going to be a stud. But when you look at that, you're like, okay, you've got a lot of good young players, but where are you missing? And defense, you look at Dickinson. I think the Sharks don't have his top end defense, but it's deep. I don't see that deepness in the Blackhawks defense prospect pool that the Sharks
Yeah.
have. And the Sharks don't have a top end prospect pool from the defense either. Like that's not Dickinson and Mukamadulin and Thompson and Kenyoni are great, but like you look at some of the other systems, there's much better defense cores out there in terms of systems.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about like the Blackhawks defensive core was that they stopped drafting defense the last 2, 3 years. It was like
Right.
Korchinski, Rinzel, and then Lev Shunov at 2, and then Ty Henry in the 7th round. So it was really interesting.
Right.
Um,
That depth seems to be missing on there. And that's what I mean. Like, you got the high upside, but it's just
yeah,
missing some of those puzzle pieces where it's like, Muka Madulin doesn't project to be a top pairing guy. They traded for him, they needed him. Hao Shi Wang doesn't project to be a top pairing guy, but he's like going to be a shutdown, you know, 4, 5, 6 defenseman. Muka Madulin's a good number 3. You're kind of missing that top guy. Dickinson could be it. Lev Shunov could be that number 1. But I feel like when you look past those top prospects, both are kind of missing something, but when you compare the Sharks and the Blackhawks, the Sharks have the pieces to fill in, whereas the Blackhawks just kind of aren't right now.
yeah. So the thing about the Blackhawks prospect pool is a lot of them are older, like 22, 23, with Ethan Del Mastro, who was actually traded for Porter Bartone way back when, which is always an interesting fun fact. Wyatt Kaiser and Nolan Allen, who was a first round pick, but kind of flared out. Not flared out, but hasn't really done what he was supposed to do. Kevin Korchinski's not a top 10 player, in my opinion, in a class. Not to say that he's a bad player, just offensive upside's there. I just feel like Rinzel was needed to pop, which he did in that draft. Like, obviously, Artem Levshunov could have number 1 potential, but Vlasic is the guy who is a shutdown. But he might be more of a second pair than a top line, the top
Right.
pair.
He's the Shakir Mukamadulin, but when you look at the skating ability, it's there. I look at those two as very similar. I think Mukamadulin might have a little bit more offensive instinct than Vlasic, but Vlasic's trying. It's tough because they have similar pieces, but that depth of where are those remaining defense prospects instead of hoping for these guys that have been here for a little bit to go? Like, you got to keep filling the back end, and you
Yeah,
could throw it back to the Sharks at the Ravensburgen pick. If Askarov doesn't work out in 3 years, and it really is like that glove hand is a problem, the injuries are a problem, and it's just not working, you have another guy that's filling the back end. If Kasper Haltinen doesn't work, you've got Igor Chernyshov and vice versa. And you just look at those kind of maybe not fail safes, but like you've got the fill-ins, the depth where
yeah.
you can try different pieces and try different options. And if both work, then you've got trade assets to go for it when you are winning.
And I feel like a lot of people forget that the Blackhawks and Sharks took the first two goalies off the board in 2023, Guyan and Harabel. And I don't know if either one is going to work out to be what they were drafted for, because Jacob Fowler was obviously in that draft and there were some other pieces. But it was kind of interesting that those guys were drafted. The Hawks have Lardis. I don't know if you're high on Lardis or Roman Kanserov, who's in the KHL playing pretty good. But they don't really have a lot of high upside players. They took Vaslav Nestorsil and Mason West, who were their high upside players this year.
Oh,
But before this year, there was like it was middle six, maybe top nine players filling out their bottom six. It was really interesting. I'd probably, if I was the GM of the Blackhawks, I would have taken a little more risks on some of the places that they drafted. I would have taken Demidov just for that. I was kind of higher on Boyum. And he fell, so I was probably a little wrong on that. But then Levshunov. But I feel like the Hawks were a little safer, and I think the Sharks and the Hawks both were higher risk this year. They both did the exact same
yeah,
thing.
very
Different
similar
areas.
drafts. They got their dependable guy in the top one. I think Misa's a little better than Frondell. That is what it
Yeah,
is. I think that's what the consensus is. But
I
when you
think
look
it
at the
is too.
remainders of the draft, that upside that we talked about, whereas it's kind of top of their board, their projects are going to take some time. But when you look at the Sharks, like I feel like you've got your pillars. You've got a couple more pillars than the
Yeah.
Blackhawks do. And that's not to slight the Blackhawks. And who knows? People come out of nowhere. People come out of left field.
And is there anything else that you wanted to like talk about before we let you go?
Um, why the Sharks are going to be the 2026 Stanley Cup champions? No, that's not happening. Um,
I
I'm
see it. I
interested.
see the
I'm
vision.
interested to see the biggest thing for both these teams, and I'll leave it at this because I know we're focusing on prospects, but
Mhm.
technically Bedard and Celebrini are still kind of prospects. Um, what does your 3 and 2 do for them? Because all this talk about prospects is great, and I wrote this in my team reset story for NHL.com that came out yesterday on Wednesday. The biggest thing for the Sharks now is you got to continue to add veteran pieces. It's not time to go for it yet, but it's development. Like if Celebrini flattens out as a 70-point guy, cool. That's a second line center. You need Misa now to be your top line center. Do I think Celebrini's going to be a 70-point guy? No, I think Celebrini's going to be a superstar, scores 90 to
Yeah.
100 points every season. Is going to win an MVP or two.
Mhm.
Because he strikes me as a guy eventually to drag his team into the fight because he just doesn't stop. I mean, the guy doesn't stop at all. So the biggest thing for me for both teams, and you can look at Bedard's sophomore slump. How is he responding this year? Well, he's training with Celebrini, which we knew was happening. He's training with Luca Cagnoni. He's training with Ravensbergen. Like, they're all in Vancouver. All these Vancouver boys training together. So, will their development, and after Celebrini's first season, and Smith's for that matter too, and Bedard after seeing, okay, when you're the guy, which Celebrini I think faced sooner than Bedard. Like, Bedard was the number one center, but they kind of shielded him a little bit, and the injury kind of kept the film on him. Celebrini only missed those 12 games. When you look at that, Celebrini, after like he was the guy, like even kind of before the trade deadline, he was already kind of being used as the guy. And then after the deadline, and well, just before Four Nations when they traded Granlund, I was like, all right, we're rolling you 22 minutes a game. Here you go, kid. And I'm interested to see how teams now adjust to them and how they play, Bedard included, with okay, you're the guy. Like you got to step up here. How will they step up in their next years? Because I would argue Celebrini's second half of this rookie year was very similar to Bedard's second half of his first year, where it's you're the guy. And I think Bedard, not to say he was overshadowed a little bit, I think Bedard didn't have as much help last year as
Yeah.
Celebrini did because Khrushchev didn't translate. Khrushchev was injured and didn't translate, and that's the guy they hope to take the next level, like William Eklund. But who was going to be next to them? The Sharks were able to fill that with Tyler Toffoli, and Smith's second half of the year was on the wing, and he was able to have great chemistry with Celebrini, and Colin Graf stepped up, and you just look at that. So, what next steps? Because without those next steps, neither of these teams are getting out of the basement. Like,
Mhm.
like great, you have all these prospects. Get them good now. That's everything. You still need to fill them a little bit, and you need to fill the roster out a little bit. But without the development, these teams are nothing. They are nothing because you are flattened out on prospects that were supposed to be very good and your core and didn't work. And that's how you have to be patient. You have to do it right. But if you don't, you're screwed because they have invested a ton. These are full rebuilds. If you don't hit on these picks, you're starting another rebuild. And you have to have hit. They look like they have, but will they hit full enough, if you will.
I want to say one thing about Macklin Celebrini. When he was playing for the Chicago Steel, and even when the Blackhawks were very close to get him, this guy was always a superstar. He plays with that fourth line mentality that I've never seen a
Yeah.
superstar have. He has all the traits, all the talent. So I don't think it's out of this world to say it's probably a 50-50 split between who you would want to build your team with, Bedard or
It's a
Celebrini.
team fit. It's a
Yeah.
team fit.
Yeah, I'm coming to this now after seeing Macklin Celebrity's incredible run that like last year, and I feel like he didn't even. It's like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
Like
like
he didn't even
you don't see that
show.
work ethic doesn't scream bust like you're a
Yeah.
70 point guy. That you know, I mean, I did. Were you in the conversation with the draft with Ravensburgen, or no? I don't remember. I
Um.
don't think you were.
Wait, when you guys were interviewing him,
Yeah,
I.
well, okay, so here's what I think happened because I think Ravensburgen was ready in the pod before we got like me, Shang, and Curtis got him before. So if you got him in the pod, I don't know if he told you this story, but Ravensburgen, or maybe he told us this. You know, he told us this at the draft. He's been skating with Celebrini. They were on the ice for like an hour and a half, and he was drenched in sweat and sweaty. And Celebrini was like, "I'm getting off," and then he got back on like 15 minutes later after having like protein or whatever. And Ravensburgen's like, I'm out of gas. And it was his first skate this summer. He lost 8 pounds because of Macklin's just
Oh my
like,
gosh.
we're
Yeah.
going, we're still going. And he's doing shots, breakaways. And Ravensburg is like, I'm exhausted, bro. I've lost, and he lost 8 pounds in one skate because of
Dude.
Celebrini. Celebrini was on the ice for 2.5 hours and didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
He left
That's
for a
crazy.
resurfacing. Yeah,
Also.
that's what I mean. Is I think that was in our little mini scrum after, not the pod
Yeah.
scrum, because we were on with Greer and everybody during that time. And that's part of the decentralized problem, right? They were ready for us, so we had to wait for.
Wow, what a great story. And yeah, Celebrini is going to be a superstar. I totally see him winning an MVP. I know I'm probably going to get hate from the Blackhawks in the comments section, but
I think they'll both win an MVP in their career. I really do. They're different players. One's a skill guy, one's a work ethic guy with skill. And not to say Bedard doesn't work hard, but like they're both MVP caliber. I think they'll both win one. Voter fatigue is a thing. It's why Nikola Jokic didn't win MVP again. Like that's
yeah,
just like, he deserved it. SGA was great, but Jokic is the MVP. No questions asked. They're both going to win MVP. They're both MVP caliber. They're just two different players, and it's hard to compare them.
yeah. So let's close it up there like a Hot Ones video. There's a camera here, here, and here. It's the middle one. So tell everybody what you got going on and what you got coming out.
Well, the summertime is slow right now, which is kind of good because I think the season is gonna be really busy for both of us. But it's going well. Obviously, just continuing to develop and age Sharks Hockey Digest again. That's my baby. That's truly a baby I created. Had my fiance's dad help me with the logo and the background, the design of it. So any support just reading it is super awesome and welcome, and I'm always happy to talk. Podcaster by trade, writer by practice now, I guess, if you will. So I'm always happy to talk and interact with people online. Digest.com. I'm with NHL.com. You'll see all the stuff on there, and NHL.com for the Sharks and maybe some other teams, whatever, comes through San Jose. I should have decent amount of coverage on Mitch Marner's debut, that's for sure, because it's happening in San Jose. So I'm kind of bummed because if Misa and Dickinson make their NHL debut, I'm going to get yelled at to be like, you have to go to Marner. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So it'll be a fun year. It's going to be a busy year, but all the coverage you'll find is NHL.com and SharksHockeyDigest.com. Twitter, real_Max_Miller. Same thing on Instagram. I'm going to try and build up a TikTok, but I don't know how that thing works. I'm not a video editor. I'm a video talker, not an editor.
I will link everything in the description. I actually just
Sweet.
created a TikTok. It had like 5 followers, and then I posted like 4 videos of Mason West, and it got like now it has like 750 followers. So I have no
Nice.
idea how that works. I have no idea how TikTok works, but they love interviews, so you just clip it. But yeah,
Hey,
thank
send
you.
me this. We'll clip it. We'll collab. We'll post together.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. I'm always down to do that. And I always love talking puck with somebody that really knows it, and you obviously really know it. So I'm definitely gonna be pushing some of your content out. I love it, and I loved meeting
Sweet.
you at the draft.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Anthony.